My son erased us. His own parents, from his life just to marry into a wealthy family. Harold and I scrimped and saved, working odd jobs and pulling night shifts at the corner store just to get him through college. The day we boarded the long-distance bus to New York for his graduation, the moment that was supposed to be the pinnacle of his life, I got a text from an unknown number just as the bus pulled out of the station. "You really shouldn't come. Jason's afraid you'll embarrass him." I froze, stunned. I called back immediately, but the call was declined. I tried texting only to realize I'd been blocked. I grabbed Harold's phone. Same thing. The screen showing blocked felt colder than the wind blowing through the bus window. It hit us like a brick wall, leaving us speechless. So we went. Even if we were being cast aside, we needed to see the boy who once called us mom and dad with our own eyes. We searched for a while before spotting him among the sea of black gowns. He was in his cap and gown, smiling closely beside a pale, well-dressed young woman. Harold and I stood off to the side, sweat beading on our brows, saying nothing, just waiting for him to turn around. He did. And then he took the girl's hand, turned his back and walked away. We stood there, lugging bags of hometown treats, unable to run after him, watching their backs disappear into the crowd. A few minutes later the girl came back. She smiled sweetly, walking up to me with a cheerful tone. "Hi, Mrs. Davis. I'm Madison Carter, Jason's fiancé. He's agreed to move into my home after the wedding. He'll be part of our family now." Harold frowned. "Your family? What's that supposed to mean?" She tilted her head, speaking slowly like we were schoolchildren. "Exactly what it sounds like. He's marrying me and he'll live in my house." We stood there stunned. "You've got to be kidding. We don't agree to this." Madison gave a little laugh. "Jason already knew how you'd react. I told him to just block you both. I'm an only child. That house is going to be in my name. And any children we have, custody will be mine, obviously, unless you want your grandkids stuck in some dead-end small town like you." Jason emerged from behind a tree and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Madison, that's enough." Harold's eyes turned red. He grabbed Jason by the collar. "Are you serious? You're okay being someone's pet project like this?" Jason's gaze didn't waver. "I know exactly what I'm doing. If you can't accept it, don't come to the wedding. I wasn't planning on sending you an invite anyway." Madison added with a smirk. "Jason, didn't you say your dad's got a temper and your mom's health isn't great? Let's just make it simple. We'll tell people your real parents passed away." The smugness on her face was unbearable. Just moments ago I'd thought she looked like a refined young woman. Now she just looked cheap. Harold lost it and slapped Jason across the face. "You've got no backbone at all." Jason just shook his head. "Dad, your ideas are ancient history." Madison clung to Jason's arm and kissed his cheek. "If you can't deal with it, don't come. We're getting married with or without you." I looked at her and asked, "Madison, don't you have parents?" She flinched, her eyes welling up instantly. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jason stepped in to shield her. "Mom, watch your tone." People were starting to stare. Jason grabbed Madison and led her away. Harold and I exchanged a look, one full of bitter disappointment. On the ride home, we sold all the local snacks we had brought for Jason at a market downtown. We didn't speak a word. 2 weeks later, the wedding happened without us. We weren't invited. We didn't go. Then around Christmas my phone rang. "Mom, can you come help with the baby? Madison just gave birth and he won't stop crying." I let out a cold laugh. Of course. When they need something, suddenly I'm family again. The call came through Joe, our neighbor. He handed me his phone, shaking his head. "Your son said your phone's off. Figured I'd swing by." I knew what that meant. Jason had us both blocked, but he kept Joe's number as a backup. Jason's voice came through on the line, skipping the pleasantries. "Mom, can you come to the city to help with the baby? Madison's exhausted. Caleb won't stop crying." I scoffed inwardly, typical. No contact for months, then suddenly we're on speed dial when they need a babysitter. But still, he was my grandson. My heart wavered. "You coming to get me?" I asked. There was silence on the other end. Then Madison took over. "Nora, I'll send a cab for you. Jason's got work, he can't leave right now." I nodded and said, "All right." As soon as the call ended, Jason lifted the block on my number. That was fast. The next day was Christmas Eve. I said goodbye to Harold at the porch. He stood there in his old work jacket watching me climb into the car, eyes rimmed red and shining. With 3 grocery bags and 1 worn-out suitcase, I spent 6 hours on a bus heading into New York City. The city hit like a tidal wave, skyscrapers looming, crowds surging in every direction. I stood outside their high-rise apartment, took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. It creaked open. Madison stood there. She blinked, startled for a second, then gave me a smirk. "Nora, this outfit is vintage." For a second, I thought it was the old lady from downstairs who digs through recycling. I didn't respond. "Is Jason home?" I asked. "He's at work." Without another word, I started dragging my things into the apartment. The clatter of luggage hitting the floor woke the baby. A sharp, high-pitched cry rang from the bedroom. Madison rolled her eyes. "Can you be a little quieter? You woke him up." I stood still, waiting for her to come out. He didn't. Instead, she called back over her shoulder, "Nora, I'm hungry. I'd love some chicken soup. The fridge is over there." Then she disappeared into the bedroom, door slamming shut. I didn't even get a good look at my grandson, just a glimpse of soft hair and a flushed little cheek. He made the cutest gurgling sound while nursing. I opened the fridge. Neatly arranged shelves of online-ordered groceries and fancy jars, but no sign of chicken breast. I knocked gently on the bedroom door. After several seconds, it cracked open. Madison poked her head out, hair a mess, voice hoarse and annoyed. "What? There's no chicken in the fridge." She rolled her eyes again. "Then make whatever soup you can. I need something nutritious." "All right. Go back to rest." But I scoured the whole kitchen and came up empty-handed. Finally, I found a frozen vegetable mix tucked away in the freezer. I boiled a simple veggie soup and whipped up 2 side dishes. By the time everything was done, nearly 2 hours had passed. I knocked on the bedroom door again. No response. Madison didn't come out until Jason came home from work. The food had gone cold, so I reheated everything. Jason frowned the second he stepped in. "Mom, why didn't you wait for us? Reheated food never tastes the same." I stayed silent and started serving the meal. I hadn't had a drop of water all day. My lips were so dry they'd begun to crack. Madison glanced at me and asked, "Mom, aren't you drinking anything? There's a water dispenser in the kitchen." She pointed to the corner. The bottle was empty. Then she reached into the cabinet and pulled out a fancy glass bottle of premium water, poured a cup and handed it to me. "We drink this filtered stuff now. It's way healthier. You probably won't be used to it though. It's not cheap." I drank the whole glass in one go. Tasted fine, but I was still thirsty. Jason noticed and handed me another bottle. "Here, Mom. Drink this for now. We'll refill the dispenser once the delivery arrives." Madison shot him a sharp look. I stared at Jason's hands, clean, manicured. And just like that, I felt disoriented. Back in his sophomore year, his spending had exploded, burning through over $1,000 a week like it was nothing. Jobs were scarce. Harold and I were both over 50. The only work we could get was hard labor. I worked night shifts at a convenience store. Harold worked part-time at an auto shop without benefits. We lived on stale bread and stretched every penny. Our lives were like old plastic bags, crumpled, worthless to others, but we couldn't bring ourselves to throw them away. We were strapped, barely holding it together. Harold picked up odd cleaning gigs while I stocked shelves and manned the register at a 24-hour gas station. At best, a full night's work brought in a couple $100, just enough to keep Jason fed at college. Most days there wasn't even work to find. Sometimes Harold would sit on the garage steps all afternoon not saying a word, just waiting for someone to call about a job that never came. My thoughts snapped back to the present as Jason urged me again to drink water. I shook my head. He sighed, "Okay, Mom. Don't if you don't want to." Then Madison came into the kitchen and spotted dinner on the table. Her face immediately twisted in disgust. He pouted like a child. "Mom, didn't we agree on chicken soup? This is vegetable." "I hate vegetables." I pointed to the fridge. "You'd have to give me the chicken yourself. I couldn't find any." She groaned, picked up the bowl, sniffed it, took one tiny sip and immediately spat it back. "What the hell is this? It's disgusting." Jason rushed over, wrapping an arm around her and handing her a tissue. "Babe, don't eat it. No one's making you." Madison looked heartbroken, lips trembling. "But it's Mom's effort. I didn't want to waste it." I said nothing. I finished my own plate and walked silently to my room without reacting to their complaints. The next morning I got up at 7 like always, fried some eggs, sliced fruit, made oatmeal. Jason ate and headed off to work. I waited until exactly 9 o'clock before knocking on Madison's bedroom door. But I hadn't even knocked twice when Caleb's wail erupted from inside, sharp and relentless like a fire alarm. I knocked faster. It took another 10 minutes of steady knocking before the door finally creaked open, just in time for a pillow to fly straight at my face, nearly catching me on the nose. "Can you stop causing chaos first thing in the morning? I'm losing my mind." Ignoring her tantrum, I rushed in and scooped up Caleb, who was red-faced and screaming. I bounced him gently, patting his back in rhythm. But he only screamed louder. I peeled back his diaper and immediately understood why. Overflowing, leaking at the edges. Where are Caleb's diapers? Madison had retreated to a corner, holding her nose. "Keep him away from me, he stinks." I stared her down without saying a word. Only then did she half-heartedly rummage through the drawers. 10 minutes later, still nothing. I lost it. "You seriously don't know where your own baby's diapers are?" He pouted like a child. "Jason usually keeps them near the bed. I was just too tired last night and forgot." A vein throbbed at my temple. "Then call him and ask." "Now." Tears welled in her eyes as if I'd just kicked her dog. "Why are you being so mean to me? This is my first time being a mom. How am I supposed to know everything?" I gave up trying to reason with her. I grabbed a pack of tissues and carefully cleaned Caleb up myself. Then I held out the bulging used diaper bag to her. "Throw it out." She recoiled like I was handing her a dead animal. "Not a chance." I walked straight to the corner and tossed it in the trash myself. It was still barely 40 degrees outside and I didn't want the baby catching a chill. I didn't even wash my hands, just wiped them off with a napkin and went digging through drawers for a fresh diaper. Under the bed, neatly stacked, were 10 unopened packs. I changed Caleb, then handed him to her. "Feed him." She pinched her nose tighter. "No way. He smells. He needs a bath first." I clenched my jaw, wrapped Caleb tightly in a blanket, and carried him downstairs to the corner grocery store. Bought a can of baby formula out of pocket. I'd just finished mixing it when Madison strolled into the kitchen to grab some water. She spotted the bottle and her expression shifted instantly. She snatched it from the counter, voice dripping with disdain. "Oh my God, Nora, what brand is this?" She grabbed the formula can, hurled it to the ground, then stomped on it like she was killing a rat. "I've never even heard of this brand. Are you trying to poison Caleb?" Then she poured the entire bottle of formula down the sink, bottle and all. I shoved Caleb into her arms. "Then you feed him." She didn't budge. Just stared coldly and said, "Your grandson's hungry. Figure it out." "I'm not doing it." Caleb's screams became wild and ragged. Madison stood at her bedroom doorway, then turned and walked off without a single glance back. I held the baby, pacing the floor, trying to soothe him. I walked into the kitchen, hoping the chicken soup I made yesterday might help. But it had burned. The whole apartment reeked of scorched broth. And Madison? She was in the bathroom, applying foundation in the mirror, adjusting the lighting, carefully drawing her eyebrows, like the screaming never even happened. I snapped. Staring at her reflection, I muttered, "With all that effort, maybe check if your son's okay." She shot me a flat glance. "The soup isn't even that burnt. Don't be so dramatic." All day Caleb barely moved. I was uneasy. I touched his forehead, burning hot. I grabbed Madison's eyelash curler from the counter and dragged her into the bedroom. "Do you even realize he's burning up?" He blinked, flustered. I didn't want to wake him, so I haven't checked." I cut her off. "Call a car." "No. Unless you're the doctor here." Right then the front door opened. Jason walked in. "What's going on?" "Mom, don't yell at Madison, she's still new at this." I laughed bitterly. "Your son has a fever and a rash. Do you know how dangerous that is? He's dehydrated. And you're lecturing me about new mom stress? Shut up and start the car." At the ear, the doctor took one look at Caleb and immediately called for emergency treatment. His body was covered in rashes, temperature dangerously high. One of the nurses muttered under her breath while inserting the four. "This poor baby, no one's been watching him." We were there all night until dawn. Caleb finally stabilized. The doctor recommended he stay for observation. I sat at his bedside, clutching his tiny hand, my head resting on a plastic chair, and drifted into sleep. When I woke up, the room was empty. I grabbed my phone. A text from Jason lit the screen. "Mom, Madison can't sleep in strange places. You're experienced. We went home for the night. She'll pick you up in the morning." I stared at the message, seething. All I wanted was to storm into their apartment, grab both their heads and scream. "What on earth made you think you were ready to have a child?" Caleb was awake, his eyes glassy with tears but soft, his chubby fingers still wrapped tightly around mine. And just like that, something tender hit me square in the chest. I smiled at him. One of those unguarded, quiet smiles, the kind that feels like sunlight pooling on kitchen tiles through a window pane. A nurse came in to do her rounds. She checked his vitals and nodded. "His fever's gone down, rash too. He's good to go home today. But it's cold out, no more of those daily baths, okay?" I nodded. Baths. Madison had used that as her excuse yesterday. Bath my foot. She didn't even want to touch him. I held Caleb close, waiting by the bed until just past noon. That's when Madison finally strolled in, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, looking like she'd just wrapped up a boozy brunch in Soho. "Sorry, Nora," she said with a lazy grin. "Overslept." I didn't say a word. I walked straight past her and out of the room. We hadn't even exited the pediatric wing before Caleb started crying again. A nurse ended up mixing some borrowed formula just to calm him down. 3 months old. Crying hoarse from hunger. And it took a stranger to feed him. I nearly slapped her. Back at the apartment, the kitchen was still a disaster. Last night's dishes were still on the table. The soup had dried into black stains on the plate. Madison tried to play it off, sweeping some clutter to the side as she chuckled awkwardly. "We were so tired last night. Didn't have time to clean up." I handed Caleb over without responding and walked straight to the guest room. "You don't want to clean? Fine. Leave it there. I didn't come here to be your damn maid." 2 hours later I came out. The table looked exactly the same. Not a fork moved. Madison was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up when she said, "Jason said he'll clean when he gets home. And anyway, Mom, this is our house. We live how we want." I looked at her and muttered under my breath, "Idiot." He heard it. She exploded, grabbed a fork off the table and flung it at the floor. It landed inches from my feet. I picked it up, stabbed it into the coffee table with force. "If you don't want it, I'll take care of it. But don't throw things on the floor like a child." Caleb started crying again. Madison didn't budge. "Nora, go check if he pooped or something. I don't really know how to do this." I walked over and grabbed her wrist. "Then learn. Don't play helpless with me. When I was a new mom, I had no one. My parents were gone. Harold and I figured it out night after night, exhausted and alone. I didn't have the luxury of crying on a couch waiting for someone else to take over." Who exactly was she performing this little victim routine for? She yanked her hand back, pouting, then pulled out her phone to call Jason. "Jason, your mom's bullying me. Come home." I didn't hear what he said on the other end, but Madison turned her head, slumped onto the couch, slipped on her headphones and pulled up a video on her phone like nothing had happened. Caleb was still wailing. She turned up the volume. The last time I felt this level of disgust was when they used the mortgage money we paid to buy her wedding dress. I picked up my phone and called Jason. He declined. I'd become nothing more than a walking aim. No more. I walked over, yanked out her earbuds and grabbed her phone out of her lap. "Go take care of your son." Madison jumped to her feet, shrieking. "No. If you want to take care of your grandson so badly, you do it." I slammed my hand on the table. "Isn't he your son?" She snatched a slipper from beside the couch and hurled it at me. "You mean old witch? I thought you were here to help me. This is help." I stormed over to the front door, flung it open and shouted, "Go on. Keep screaming. Let the whole damn building hear what kind of mother you are. You want me to take care of the baby? Fine. I will. You want me to cook, clean, run this place for free? Not a chance. You don't cook. You don't feed him. You haven't written me a single check. And your precious husband, my son, hasn't sent a dime to this household. Do you both think I was born to serve you?" Madison charged forward, slammed the door shut with her shoulder, then collapsed onto the floor, screaming and clutching her head. "I don't care anymore. I'm done. I don't want to be a mom. You can't make me do this." I laughed bitterly. Walked up and grabbed her arm. Then why did you have him? No one forced you to give birth and dump him on someone else. He kicked her legs in the air like a toddler mid-tantrum. Jason takes care of him when he's home. Ask him. It's not all on me. I snapped. Jason works all day. What do you think he's doing, journaling in his pajamas? He pouted childlike. My mom used to help. But she quit. And that's when it hit me. I was the relay baton. The replacement no one asked, just handed off. I sighed and walked over to Caleb. His little face was flushed from crying, but when he saw me, he hiccuped and stretched out his arms. I gently took his chubby hand. His diaper was soaked. After I changed him, he started squirming, fussy, hungry. His tiny hands kept reaching in Madison's direction. She lay on the floor, pretending not to hear, music blasting from her earbuds. I walked over, picked up her bubblegum pink phone and smashed it. One loud crack. Pieces scattered. The chip, the wiring, everything laid bare. She shrieked and lunged at me like a bird with broken wings. I sidestepped. She missed. Crashed hard into the floor. The thud made me wince. That's when Jason walked in. Mom, why are you always coming down on Madison? She's young. Why can't you cut her some slack? And then he pushed me. Hard. So hard I nearly slammed into the kitchen counter. I caught myself, straightened up, pulled out my phone and glanced at the time. 7 p.m. Then I looked him in the eye and without a word slapped him. Once. Twice. 3 times. I don't touch other people's daughters, I said coldly. But I still have the right to teach my own son. Madison shrieked. Stop it. You can't do this. I didn't turn around. This isn't mutual combat. This is discipline. I opened the fridge, grabbed a cold bread roll and walked back to the bedroom. No dinner tonight. Whoever's hungry can figure it out themselves. At 2 a.m. I heard the door creak open. A soft little body was gently placed in my arms. I was still half asleep but instinctively pulled him close. When I woke up, Caleb was staring up at me, smiling. So sweet, so innocent. I froze for a second, stunned by how pure he looked. On the nightstand sat a handwritten note. Jason's handwriting. By the time you read this, we'll be in Miami. Just a 2-day trip. Don't worry, I bought Caleb's formula. It's on the dining table. No need to worry. Jason. I took a photo of the note and sent it to Harold. No caption. Jason and Madison had ditched their infant son and gone on vacation. They think they can just walk away? Not on my watch. I stood in the kitchen, shaking formula into a bottle, muttering under my breath. They want to play the carefree parents? Not happening. That evening, Harold arrived, lugging bags full of groceries. Dry-cured ham, nuts, string cheese, and my favorite, salted cashews. He was drenched in sweat, breathless as he set everything on the counter. I poured him a warm glass of milk and set it by his hand. He looked at me, eyes tired, but said nothing. Just drank. Remember how Jason looked when he was on formula? I asked. Of course I remember, he sighed. Back then, one can was $25 and I barely made $2,000 a month. I nodded quietly. He went through 4, sometimes 5 cans a month. We couldn't even afford meat. Harold looked out the window. His voice dropped. I was working heavy construction. One time I almost fell off the top floor. If Tom hadn't grabbed me, he shook his head, I probably wouldn't be here. I reached over and held his hand. The wind rustled the branches outside. Pale sunlight scattered across the floor in broken patches. Then Caleb let out a soft coo from the nursery.